Cavalier faithful, right off the top, I just want to say I am a fan of action over inaction, and the Cavaliers have been active. We're going to talk all things free agency, whether it's Max Strus, George Niang, Damian Jones, Ty Jerome, bringing back Karis LeVert. We have it all for you here today. Here today. So let's get into this one. I'm going to start with Justin. Off the top, tell me your favorite offseason move and why.
It would probably be bringing back Harris, just because even I have my reserves about him. But
Really?
instead of instead of letting him walk away and kind of like destroy what little value that we had left in, re-signing the guy of his caliber, because obviously you did see that there were some outside interest. It never really got to that, but there were interest in him. It just means that if later on in the year, if lineups are like increasingly weird, which I think they will be because of the guys that we've added and shipped off, I just think that it'll be nice to be able to send him out for something in return instead of just letting him walk and get nothing. I'm not a huge fan of the guys that we sign. That's not to say that I don't think they'll be great additions or that they'll work on this team. It's just not exactly what I thought was needed moving forward. I think that a lot of great points will be brought up about these guys, but I think there are also some counterpoints that will be interesting going back to the last playoff series. So I'm interested to see what Logan has to say, and obviously Jeff, you too as well.
Yeah, Logan, we haven't really talked in depth face to face about this, so I'm very curious for your answer. Same question to you, and mostly just honestly curious about the reasoning, regardless of who you decide to choose.
I mean, first of all, Justin's right. I know you guys don't love Karras. I'm more of a Karras guy than y'all. But at the end of the day, he was the best player in that series against the Knicks. I that series alone, to me, I was like, okay, let's bring him back. You can talk about the numbers and what we're paying him. And believe me, we're paying these guys a lot of money. I think that's what makes the decision difficult because my favorite addition is Max Strus, and that's the easy answer. But you also look at that contract and you're like, he has a lot to live up to. So the thing is, his impact could be so massive for the Cavaliers. It could be. But again, you have that looming money. So anytime he scores 11 points and knocks down 2 triples, you're going to be, he's getting paid $17.5 million. Like, we'd expect more. It just depends. I think we need a guy that doesn't need the ball in his hands. We have enough of those guys in regards to, touches to go around. So having a guy that's just a flat foot shooter, that's exactly what I wanted for the Cavaliers to get. Niang is one of those guys I've had on my list for a couple of seasons. I think he's a great veteran. He can really shoot the three. And I think I sent you guys the tweet. If you replace Cedi Osman and Lamar Stevens with George Niang and Max Strus, we went from 19th in three-point makes last season to what would be 5th nowadays. I mean, that's a pretty substantial change there. Our biggest problems were knocking down open freaking shots against the Knicks. But the thing we're still worried about here is rebounding, right? And I'm sure we'll get into it. I know Justin's really passionate about it, and I know all of us should be passionate about it because we were pretty pissed off and passionate about it against the Knicks. So my favorite pickup's got to be Strus. It's the easy answer. I think he solves a lot of problems, but he doesn't. If he's not what we think he is, you never know where this could go. Damian Jones is interesting. What do we think of Isaiah Mobley, big wise? That's kind of the next, area that the Cavaliers have to totally shore up.
I think the stat that you brought up is pretty much the stat of the offseason. If you really want to justify these moves, which I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Justin. It's not that I don't really hate anything that we've done. I could say that with confidence. I really did like getting Niang. I think that is going to be my answer, but it's not like you said, Logan, I'm really, really not in love with not only the money, but a lot of, 3-year contracts, 4-year contracts on these guys. And I know you have to, role players are valued and cherished in this league. So it's not like you're going to get them for cheap. You're not going to get a guy like Max Strus for, 10 or 11 or $12 million, but he's coming off a contract where he only made $2.5 million last year. The part of building rosters that makes it work is when you get players whose value on the court far exceeds their contract. And I'm not certain we have done that with Niang and with Strus. I think Niang, he might be better suited because it's only 11 million, but still, I mean, his last contract last year with Philadelphia, 2 years, 6.7 million, averaging, less than $3.5 million a year. Now his base salary this year is almost $8.5 million. So I know these guys are getting paid, I understand that, but I'm not certain that the value is going to be exactly what we think it is. And I think that's a valid point. Now, moving forward, Logan, let's go back to you because I wanted to leave this question toward the end, but I think it's relevant right now. With everything that's happened, do you expect anything else to be done, and or is Jarrett Allen on the move?
I think that's the only thing that we could expect to be done. I think as far as straight signings go, I think you need to slow down a little bit, honestly, because if you look at that rotation, I want Amani Bates to see minutes. I do. I want him to see some real rub this season. And right now, technically, you could have Strus Okoro over him because they're NBA ready and have been here, obviously, and have actually played an NBA game. But I think you got to slow down a little bit. I think Damian Jones that was kind of interesting to me. I think that was kind of like a here, Cavs fans, we got a big, but it didn't really feel like the big that's going to make the difference. He's very athletic. He can defend the rim okay. Alley-oop threat. Like maybe if he has that big role, that's fine. But yeah, when you talk about big men, let's get back to Jarrett Allen. I think that's the only move left. I don't necessarily think we have to move on from Jarrett Allen, but if the right package is there, sure, let's do it. But the thing that worries me, we're talking 3-and-D. We're getting another 3. We're talking about a wing, is what I'm hearing. I've
we
heard
don't. That's my
there.
issue too. We don't. Right. We haven't really I get it. You have to address shooting, and I get it that was a big issue last year. But how many seasons are we going to go without getting a true 3? Like, is this another season where it's like, is Strus really a true 3? I don't think so.
No, he
well,
that's
why I'm interested. Well, and they said Niang has a chance to start, because there was some article or some quote out there that I read of someone asking Strus or someone talking about Strus's position on the team and what they might ask of him, and they're like, yeah, he could start. He has starter level potential, but that's not exactly sure what they're going to do with him because they brought in Niang first. I mean, he's your closest thing to a prototypical starting 3, but I don't know how good his defense is. He could just be, really slow on the defensive side, but a great, stand in the corner 3-point guy, which is perfectly fine because, we have all the people, and people are like, oh, well, Chetty could shoot well. No, he couldn't. He was super streaky. And yeah, his averages are good because he starts off the season hot as heck and then goes away for the entire rest of it. There was a stat that I had and I've lost it now, but it was percentages of open threes were taken. Chetty was far above the 2 guys that we got of Strus and Niang, and made 3-pointers. He's right in the same position as all of them, which is an awful thing to say when his percentage is so much higher. So it'll be interesting. But I'm with Jeff. Again, the size, you don't see what happened in the Knicks series really getting addressed outside of, now we have guys that they should respect on the offensive side in terms of shooting. And it helps out the rotation because now when you're going 1 through 8, it's pretty much set of who's coming off the bench. It's Karras, Niang, or Strus, and then Okoro, because then Okoro's your 8th guy. You don't have to worry about, all right, well, maybe we pull Lamar Stevens for what reason? He doesn't do anything special. It's at least these 3 guys, you're all right, 3-point shooting, you have playmaking, and then you have defense. You don't have a big rotation there, but you still have 3 things that you're getting off the bench now that are secured.
I have to pose a question if we're staying with Jarrett Allen here, Jeffrey.
Sure.
For you two, did his comments bother you after this series, or do you think that people are making too much of a big deal about it? him basically saying I wasn't ready for the big lights.
Bother
So that Twitter discussion.
Bother me, no, but just I don't know why you would ever say that.
It's kind of weird.
Don't admit, like, I mean, just take it on the chin and move on with your life. Like, don't ever admit that you were flustered by the opposition. Isn't that like rule number one in sports?
Yeah, I would never use that against him to trade him though, and that's the problem I have with people on Twitter is like, oh, he's not ready for the big lights. He said so.
Right,
I'm like,
right.
Guys,
those are the same people that tell me not to look in, Donovan Mitchell hanging out in New York all summer. But however, however that goes. Well, that's what I'm saying though. But at the end of the day, I put this out there on Twitter. I think Lamar Stevens was, and I was a little shocked that Lamar Stevens got moved. It made sense to me because I don't think they're going to move Dean Wade after giving him an extension because that's kind of just how Kobe operates at the end of the day. But who's your physical guy? Justin, think about this 1 through 8 with me. Who's your physical defender? Nobody. I don't class. All right. I'll concede that Okoro is a good defender. I do not describe him as a physical defender whatsoever.
No.
And who's your enforcer? Who's like your grit, physical, tough guy coming off the bench?
Yeah, no.
Ed Davis available?
You would have to hope that like an Isaiah Mobley somehow develops into that. But again, like when we're talking about developing guys and trying to get them to play a specific role, I mean, it just shouldn't be so hard to convince guys to go to go after rebounds instead of like just letting the two big men do it and then watching 5 Knicks players go after the ball. I just think that's the only thing that I'm hoping for with getting Strus and Yang is that they're hustle guys and that they're not like, all right, I'm just gonna do my job and sit at the 3-point line and just sit there and shoot,
Yeah, I mean, I think the rebounding is a big thing, and that's my thing with Jarrett Allen, and I'm like not considering him an elite rebounder, but he's kind of like a walking double-double when he's
still a top center.
When he cares, he's a walking double-double, like when he's not flustered. And it's like to the point where for our needs, I was on board for trading him before these moves because I still maintain the fact that we cannot win with 2 non-shooting bigs. So either Mobley, we cannot go far in the playoffs, not win, but Mobley has to develop a shot, which is kind of like, 50-50, I think, going into every season here on out. Or you move Jarrett Allen, but who are you moving Jarrett Allen for that brings back just as good as a rebounder, just as good as a defender, and somebody who's a little bit more physical? I don't know if there's names out there.
I mean,
again, I concede that there's two like trade partners out there that bring you something in return with Jarrett Allen, and you might lose a little bit, but again, I think there's still a lot more to gain out of it. It's just that the Pacers, again, they have Miles Turner there and Buddy Hield. You now have multiple guys on contracts that can probably line up with Buddy now that Jarrett Allen's contract overtakes Miles Turner's. You get a guy who you can put at power forward, move Evan to the 5, and then finally have your like number 1 guy at the 3 that would far and above be better than anyone we've had there in like the last since LeBron's left, The second idea is you go to Golden State, who, again, they just re-signed Draymond, so at small forward, they're secured. You go and you try to get Kuminga off of them, and maybe you get Looney as well. And I think that's one where you go 2 for 1, where you could go Looney and Kuminga for Jarrett Allen, and you move.
Get Looney.
That's interesting.
Again, that's one of those scenarios where you're going to take the bullet on losing what Jarrett Allen gives you in terms of his defense and his rebounding, and you're like, all right, you get Looney, who's definitely not as good as him in both those categories, but
you're taking a swing on potential with Kuminga.
Yeah, and with just like the sake of floor spacing and whatnot. But again, all hypotheticals, all things that, we probably won't even like talk about again until the trade deadline now.
I mean, real out there, are the Raptors sellers? Are they looking at OG or Pascal Siakam? I know those are a lot bigger names, and I don't think Jarrett Allen would get it done. You'd need a lot more, but I guess that's the other question. You kind of want Mobley to stay at the 4. I think that's his overall position. I think he could play the 5, but I don't know if he can defend some of That's not true. He's a great defender, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't think he has quite the body yet for it to be like a standalone take bumps all game long type of five, you know?
Yeah.
That's the question. Do you want to move Mobley? If you think Mobley can play the flat five, then you can afford to go grab a solid four, a solid tall three. But options are numerous, I think, with Jarrett Allen. But the thing is, I just feel like it might be more of
His
a heck
value is
of a
too
fourth.
low right now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
no.
it's just way too low. It's at rock bottom, especially like Logan. No matter like even if him saying what he said it doesn't like affect his game or whatever, it still affects how people view him and like will be like they'll get on just like people get on Kobe right now about the whole KPJ and Bates stuff. Like he traded away one knucklehead for to go back and draft a kid that again considered a knucklehead. And it's like, all right, well, what kind of message are you giving? Do you care about these things? Do you not care about these things? GMs will care about these things. They'll be like, all right, well,
Right.
I'm going to bring in a guy who said these things. If he goes to somewhere like New York, they'll have him in the papers the next day. They'll be like,
Mhm.
oh, bringing Jarrett Allen where the lights are brightest. Hope it doesn't burn his eyes out or something. That's just how it is, though.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that's, we have brought in people who do have some sort of history with Donovan Mitchell. I think that's interesting, and not a lot of people are talking about. I've heard it mentioned like as chemistry wise, but this is your off season. This is one of your off seasons to try and kind of show him that maybe he is the cornerstone of the franchise. But I think that's a conversation for down the road, potentially not this off season, maybe next off season, which is a long way away. Last thing here before we wrap up, let's start with Logan. Give me a scale 1 through 10, grade it out for me, how you're feeling this offseason so far, and any ideas on maybe potential more moves, or are we pretty much wrapped up for right now?
If we're talking 10 is a perfect off season, one, you did nothing. I think we're sitting right around a six. I think we
Okay.
did address things that we had to address, and I am excited about the additions we made. If Strus works out the way that it is in my head as a guy who can just stand there and hit threes and not have to worry about the ball, I think that could make our offense really, really deadly. I think a lot of the professionals, the experts out there, are saying we're having one of the best off seasons so far. But
Yeah.
the thing is that just because we're in the headlines a lot,
Yes.
Cavaliers
Yes.
sign this, Cavaliers sign that, or is it because we got quality players? I think we got a couple quality players. I don't think Ty Jerome will see the floor. I think he's a pretty solid player. He can get a bucket. I don't know if Damian Jones will see the floor. Is Isaiah Mobley going to play over him? I think Niang and Strus have to be shoe-ins to be in the lineup. But then that brings up the questions of a core, all that. So I think if we're talking 1 to 10, I'm at right around a 6. And overall, like, I know this isn't actually how it works on the grading scale at schools, but probably like a B minus so far. We're not
B
we're not where
minus.
we need to
Okay.
be. And I think I'd be happy with. I'm thrilled if we're an A minus, plain and simple, A minus or above. So I'm not thrilled, but I'm overall liking the direction we're going.
Close. Justin?
Yeah, I give it a 5. I'm more of the mind of like I just think we went and got out players that were Struz. I think was like one of the hottest names going into free agency. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's what we're gonna have to find out because I just think that there's a chance that this is just a guy who came from a coach who knows how to call this game, has been calling this game for decades in the NBA, win championships and whatnot. Now he comes to JB system. It's a lot to be said about coaching in this and
Sure.
how this all shakes out. So I'm going to go with a 5. I think that's low for right now, but I do think that at least Kobe has gone out there and kind of like fixed what the rotation should be because I don't think there's any question of who should be getting minutes now off the bench in terms of like your 1 through 8 guys. But that's just me. I'll have to see it all in action before it pans out.
I'll also shout out Lamar Stevens, shout out Jetty Osman.
Yep. Yep. Valid points.
Last
Valid.
piece of the 2018 finals team, Jetty goes away. It does feel I love Jetty. At the end of the day, as much of a headache as he gives me, you got to give him his due credit and hope all goes well in San Antonio. He'll be the next Manu in 2 years, I'm sure of it.
Him and
great
Lamar
point.
going to the Spurs is such a fantastic thing for them,
Good for
though.
them.
Like honestly,
Yeah.
if they could have gone anywhere else, I think they just would get screwed.
Yep. Totally agree. Honestly, great points with those two guys. Forgot to shout them out at the top, but I will agree with Logan. I think a 6. And I just have 2 points here before we wrap up. You got to take prior moves into account when talking about current or future moves because, okay, this is nice that we've added these guys. And I know hindsight's 2020. It's very difficult for people who observe the team to kind of predict things, but you're the general manager. So now last year's Wade contract kind of looking bad. And if you want Ty Jerome to play, you're just basically saying that the Rubio contract is bad. So I would just give, a warning, like kind of pick your battles out there, because you can't just make moves this offseason and act like last offseason and the draft last year never happened. Number 2, I do think we see Jarrett Allen moved. I don't know for what or for where or for why, but I think that it sounds like they don't really value him as much as we thought that they did. So I think that'll be interesting. A lot of things to watch. We appreciate you guys hanging out and watching this upload on the Cleveland Pulse with us. We're still going to be covering free agency. Maybe we'll talk about some other moves that could potentially happen. We got blockbuster, Damian Lillard trade to the East potential, whether it be Miami, whether it be Philly, wherever Portland wants to send them. So we'll keep you guys locked in. Make sure you guys are informed. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.